This episode is brought to you on Hawkstream, where you can find other podcasts like Music at the Dub, where Logan interviews musicians from all over the area.
Harper to get it in. Throws it to Ewing. Ewing surrounded. 2 seconds to shoot. He drives. He shoots. He missed. He missed. He missed. We ring the bell, baby. Ding dong. The witch is dead.
Takes the ball at the 30. He's hit and got away. Back upfield to the 35 to the 40. He's to the 45. He's to
Hawktalk. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Hawktalk with Easy and the Beards. I am Easy.
I am beard number one.
And I am beer number 2.
Beard number 1 is back.
Took a week off, almost forgot my name.
You left it in Vietnam, huh? Today we have a new guest. Special guest, of course, like always. We say that every episode. We have a very, very special
You
guest.
should release T-shirts when that's the phone says I'm a special guest.
Special. That's a really good idea.
Coming soon to easyandthebeards.com.
There you go. We'll let you know. Today we have on newly hired coach Jeff Graves, coming over from Campbell, the track and field coach. This will be year 1. Literally just got on campus, I believe, Monday, right?
Yeah. And, starting off, forgetting names, Beard 1, Beard 2, easy. So Jeff Klaves, we got to get that right, but it's with a K, yeah.
With a K, okay.
But I honestly always have that same impression, get it wrong to get it right. And, man, I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you on. It's great to get some new blood in here and kind of break you in, I guess, a little bit. Let you know about the campus.
Sounds good.
No, Keto. Other mic.
You this way?
Yeah.
Am I good with the mic here, though? Audio's good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Now you're good.
All right, cool.
Good to go. All right, so yeah, we kind of like to just get a little bit of a background on our guests usually, kind of let you know or let us know a little bit about you, where you came from. I know fellow Wisconsinite like myself from West Allis, I believe.
Yeah.
Went to Central or Hale?
Yep. West Allis Central.
Central, okay. So yeah, tell me a little bit about growing up being a track guy up there. I know track isn't that, at least for me, it wasn't that big, just so cold up there. I know that time of year, I'm not too sure exactly how you got into track. If you want to just kind of let us know what led you down that road, and then obviously the transition to getting a scholarship and coming down here for college at Campbell.
Yeah, so, I started off, everything big into football, baseball, basketball. I think the ball sports is obviously all we really get attracted to. And didn't get into track until I got to high school. So my freshman year at West Allis Central, I had a gap in a season because Wisconsin is so cold, like you're talking, Easy. So baseball's not till the summer. So during the spring, I got recruited. Track coaches are always relentless trying to get athletes out there, just trying to get some interest into it. And next thing you know, I stopped growing, didn't achieve those 6'5" heights I was looking for. And so basketball and some of those other sports just didn't fall through, but really just developed a passion for track, and here I am.
Awesome. So I know you, 4-year letterman at West Allis, correct?
Yeah.
So when you were in track, but then also, like you said, football, baseball, was it kind of, once you found that kind of love for track, did you kind of put everything else aside and focus on track, or were you always kind of getting your toes wet and everything still throughout high school?
Yeah, so track, even at the high school, like, you talk about trying to find that interest and, what's really good, what do you want to be a part of? And I was all in with football, basketball, baseball, and, track was kind of just a spacer, and we actually were 8th place out of 8 teams my freshman year in the conference. And I think one thing that I learned so much is, I started getting more and more into it. And, I was a guy that brought the juice. So, it didn't matter what sport it was, and, started getting really good at it. I had a coach that, didn't necessarily know exactly where my fit was going to be, but knew I was really talented. And once we kind of found that role, that level of interest started growing and growing. And we went from a team that was last place to winning the conference championship my senior year. And, just that whole mentality of, being invested, building a program is exactly, I think that's kind of led me all the way through even my professional life. I've been kind of a program builder almost everywhere I've went. And, now coming into this situation, this opportunity where we're at, there's always such a strong, history with UNCW. So for the first time ever, I'm coming into a base, a university that is ready. And, we are essentially a part of the resurgence, you know, and essentially the resurrection of the track program again with, you know, instead of me having to build everything from scratch. So I'm excited to lead.
Absolutely.
Well, you talked about all the sports you played in high school. When did it finally become, you know, you actually made the decision to come down to North Carolina, you know, and come to Campbell? Were there other options available for you, or, you know, what was that like?
Yeah, so, you know, I think like a typical guy, you know, the girls always do a way better job of this. You know, I started making my decisions my senior year and was actually all set up, you know, was going to stay in the state of Wisconsin, you know, had a lot of good interest from local schools there to want to come run for, and actually signed a letter of intent with University of Wisconsin La Crosse, one of the premier Division III schools in the country. And, you know, they had a role for me to, you know, kind of be set up to try to help win a national championship in their DMR. And, you know, I was just a guy, like, you know, talked about bringing the juice. I always kind of had this level of intent to just get after it. And, you know, coaches saw that when they came and saw me compete. And, you know, where North Carolina and where this whole search came from is I started really running some fast times at the end of the year. And so I started getting these calls late. And Campbell just kind of enticed me to come on a visit. And I wasn't breaking any NCAA rules because Division III is non-scholarship. So I came down on a visit. And, you know, it's essentially I've been down south ever since.
I was going to ask if you'd been to Buies Creek before you committed to going there.
Yeah, no, they actually got me too when the campus, you know, was the summertime. So, you know, you think if there's no action in Buies Creek on a normal day, you know, I was there when there was one stoplight. I think I saw about 2 cars that day. And, you know, really just kind of took advantage of a chance to get away, to kind of become my own man, become, you know, my own person. And, you know, I haven't looked back.
Also a nicer climate, no doubt, and you you run for 4 years there studying math. Where did the math come from? Was that kind of something you were always excelling at also in high school?
Yeah, my AP Calculus teacher might tell you something different just because I think back then I wasn't doing my homework as much as I needed to. But I was the frustrating kid that always did really well on tests, you know. And when I got to the college scene, Campbell, the part that actually recruited me more than even just the track side was their pharmacy school. You know, it was part of that time when pharmacy was starting to be a big thing. The health sciences were really starting to be all over the country. And, you know, it's just I got a couple C's when I needed to get A's. So I knew my chances of getting into pharmacy school weren't that high. So I ended up getting the math degree, loved it, ended up tutoring, you know, becoming a teaching assistant at Campbell. And, you know, that's really kind of what propelled the whole math career as a secondary option, which I think most of us always kind of change, you know, once or twice when we're in college. It's always good to have a plan. But, you know, my plan B ended up becoming my plan A, and it's been great.
And talk about just a little bit about being an athlete, a D1 athlete at Campbell, you know, being just 2 hours down the road, not even here in Wilmington. You know, a lot of our sports play Campbell on an annual basis. So, you know, a lot of Seahawk fans or student athletes are going back up and forth. They're familiar with Buies Creek. What was it like living there and being an athlete there?
Yeah, and Buies Creek's always going to be a place that's special. You know, it's this sense of culture, family, kind of camaraderie, and everything that brought me there. And it's one where it was the best situation for me, you know, when I kind of had a chance to really be able to focus on academics, athletics, and really have no distractions. That was kind of the best case scenario for me. You know, obviously I love, you know, obviously what Wilmington has to provide, and, you know, we're going to get a different type of kid, you know, to be able to recruit and be able to go to school here. And even the vibes walking in this room, you know, we kind of talk about it, you know, each university, each city kind of has their own persona. And I think the best thing for me was just kind of that real small town atmosphere. You know, being from Milwaukee, I was a big city guy. So I just kind of was really able to hone in and, you know, kind of become my own man and, you know, figure out who I really wanted to be. Because my family is extremely large. You know, I've got, you know, 40 plus cousins. You know, my mom's one of 10. You know, so I feel like, you know, just kind of chance to get away is something I jumped on. And, you know, the thing that I'll always remember about, you know, Buies Creek was just the guys, you know, you have a brotherhood, this whole sense of ownership in everything you do. And, you know, just like I helped, you know, obviously our team in high school win a conference championship, we went through a bunch of adversity and really got to a point where we were able to lean on each other. And those are still some of my lifelong friends to this day. And, you know, I think those are memories you're never going to forget.
Yeah, you were academic All-American, 2-time All-Atlantic Sun. I mean, you had some success as a track athlete down in Campbell. What are some things that kind of stand out to you from that transition from Wisconsin to Campbell, whether it's kind of athletic or even to culture? Like, you know, whether it's Southern hospitality, stuff like that. Are there some things that jump out to you that kind of maybe shook you a little bit in the beginning, or were kind of a lot different than what you were used to coming from Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, first off, in the fall, I felt like it didn't rain once. So when we talk about the heat and you talk about having to persevere through that, I remember asking my coach at the time, I was like, does it rain down here? So it almost seemed like Vacation USA my entire first semester I was in college. But, I think the big transition is just the movement of life. There's a lot of really good things about Wisconsin. Everybody will talk to you. Everybody's super friendly, but, it gets cold. So everybody's kind of in their own little cluster, their own little world. I feel like when I made the move down to Campbell, down here in North Carolina, it's, everything takes longer than you think. So you got to make sure to allocate some time because you're going to have some conversations. If you have a meeting at 9, showing up 8:45, 8:30 is probably the way you want to go. And you probably won't leave. If it ends at 9:30, you'll be there till about 10 o'clock. And, just everything moves a little bit slower, which is kind of a rate that, I've really enjoyed. And, it doesn't mean that we don't get things done. It's just being able to have that Southern hospitality, say hi, open doors. It's really what life's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I can attest to, too. It's definitely kind of a little bit of a slower pace, but you're absolutely right about the Southern hospitality. It's real. And then kind of get into maybe that transition then from Campbell, then you end up at Hopkinton High School. Newton Grove, not very far. I know that's probably even smaller than Buies Creek, maybe about, 500-600 people in that town?
Yeah, that's Farm Town, USA.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually worked in Turkey some years ago, so I know exactly what the middle of nowhere is, and that's it. And you had a lot of success there. You're actually the AD, I believe, and helped start, like you said before, start that program, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or start the track program there, correct?
Yeah, so like how the transition to Hopton happened. So, I graduate, obviously your eyes are wide open. You're looking to get a job. I actually did come back to Wisconsin, and I had an internship at the University of Wisconsin as a biostatistician using my math degree, and I was doing comparative analysis of pharmaceutical drugs and just realized the cubicle life was not for me. Yeah. And I had volunteered at Hopton during some of the statewide testing, and so what the principal knew me. They actually offered me a job even, when I was there tutoring because they were looking for a math teacher. So it was one I kind of always had just in the back of my head, and that's where networking, obviously building relationships is so important. And so I took advantage going back down. I knew the area, was able to move into a place, and had a couple of friends that were actually teaching majors that graduated and were teaching at Hopton too. So a nice little connection there. And, once I got there, it's all about, just trying to be tunnel visioned and, really just work hard where you're at. The first time I was at Hopton, I was only there for a year because I got poached, to go be a college coach. But that first year even, it was all about, okay, what don't we have? What can I make an impact with? I think as a teacher, you're always trying to find a way to give back. And, with the service kind of mindset, I went into track, which is something I knew. And they just never had a team focus. They never had a program. So, I really take a lot of pride in starting that, essentially the team focus from inception. And then we started really trying to push to win. So.
Yeah, you guys had some success there as well eventually while you were there, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Some 1A championships, conference championships, right?
Yeah, so, I can't even remember the numbers. The kids could probably tell you more than that. But things really just kind of propelled, had a really talented young man that started things off, won 2 state titles, and just that was in shot put and discus. That's how I got into the throws world. And from there, he was kind of like a magnet, homecoming king, just a really good quality kid. And you know how buzz kind of spreads. So once kids start to really enjoy their experience, track then turned to a point where we had, almost 20%, 30% of the student population, depending on the year, that was all a part of track. It was a school of 500, and I had a track roster of 80 at the start.
Oh, wow.
And, we really pushed high academics. The teachers were on board. So, like, they had travel slips where they had to have above, C's to be able to travel. So, these kids started becoming some of the most upstanding, student athletes in the school. And so track really brought a lot out of them in a good way. And, that led to community support. And so everything's about funding, and kind of about, cash flow and things. And, since we started the program from nothing, we had essentially no money for even buses, no money for gear, no money for equipment. And all of that quickly changed just because of the experience that the kids were having. And winning just became a result, because when you put high-quality kids, in a room or, just being able to work hard together, they start even getting goals in their heads. And, it was always about them. And so once the culture was there, winning became a result. And, I appreciate, obviously, the compliment about the accolades. And, I know we had state champions across numerous events, shot, disc, the jumps, the sprints. It was a really fun ride. And those hotel moments, even before those state championships, those are probably the coolest moments because the kids just talking about the year, talking about what happened. And we used to have this tradition where we play Connect Four tournaments at the hotel the night before. And them just having fun trying to earn some Nike gear because I don't know if it was illegal back then, but I would buy a whole bunch of, Nike gear, and the kids would know they had all this incentive to be able to go. And I think that's one thing that really got me close to the kids too, is I found these really cool incentives for them to try to earn and work for. We're in this age where I think a lot of the older generation thinks we get everything kind of handed to us. And its technology is awesome. It's obviously helped. I'm in that switch of generations. But it's kind of helped. But you got to creatively find incentives to keep getting everything out of every situation.
Is the Connect Four tournament like 2 out of 3, or is it just one and done?
Oh, it's one and done. Now,
There's
a loser side of the bracket. So obviously,
so
if you lose, double elimination.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I would come with sheets of the bracket. You got seeding based on your grade level. So the seniors obviously got some of the better seeds, and the freshmen had to deal with the wrath, and sometimes it happens fast, and you better know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely, you got to pay attention to
that.
But just to rattle off some of those numbers, I think 10 1A conference championships, 20 state medalists, 4 state champs at shot put, discus, 200 meter, 300 meter, and coach of the year several times. 8 kids throughout your time that ended up with D1 or D2 scholarships. So definitely some success while you're at Hopkinton.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
then
kind of in the middle of that though, like you mentioned, you went to Hopkinton for a year, kind of started the groundwork there, but then did you get a call from East Tennessee State?
Yeah, so my head coach at Campbell, he obviously knew I was a hardworking guy, and there was an opportunity to go be a graduate assistant over at East Tennessee State, and it was for a distance position. So distance was kind of my forte when I was in college, and what GAs do, essentially they're like the sous chef, right there to the head coach. And the head coach was a distance guy, and he was later in his career. I actually was his last GA before he retired, and so he really wanted somebody who had essentially a lot of just work drive to be able to help take off the workload. And so I got thrown in the fire and actually was helping out with the women's side very extensively, and especially the middle distance runners too. And had in 1 year recruited a girl, took her to the first round of NCAAs, and that coach, I'm telling you, he's like a second father. I swear every coach, when you really develop relationships with, I think you can always kind of call him a second father or a mentor. And I was there helping him at his house, move. I was there having breakfast with him almost every single day. He really took care of me because as a GA, you make no money. He knew I just graduated, and everything was kind of reciprocated back and forth. And it was definitely an eye-opening experience.
that coach was David Walker, correct?
Yep, David E. Walker.
So David Walker, too, arguably one of the better college track coaches ever.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly. What was that experience like, and what were some things that you kind of were able to pick his brain about and kind of maybe even take with you then as you became a head coach then eventually?
Yeah, I think you always learn that it's about relationships. And so, before you have to know the X's and O's about, the training and the methodology and all the stuff that goes into it, the biggest takeaway I have from him is just the relationships. I came in all like eyes open, like, oh, I'm going to learn so much content. I'm going to learn all these secret workouts. And then you really find out that the sauce is really just in the relationship you have. And, I kind of changed that mindset. So very early in my career, I knew it was about, not necessarily having the perfect workout, but about how you implement it. and what you're trying to get out of it. And, because I think all that content is out there. But what defines us as coaches is that relationship. It's the what can we get out of each person? How can I make you the best version of yourself? And him as a leader, even later in his career, that's what he did. And those kids would run through a brick wall for him. And I think once you get that mentality, you're going to achieve a lot of great things.
And then following that, I guess that parlayed you into a paid gig, right, at Florida Gulf Coast for
Yep.
a year. How did that treat you?
Yeah, so Coach Walker, when I got on as a GA, he's like, 2 years. I'm going to retire in 2 years. And halfway through the year, he's like, I think I only got about one. And so he being very open and honest with me, I started actually overloading. We know grad school is extremely tough, just like getting your bachelor's. I took 18 credits of grad school my second semester at ETSU, and I ended up graduating, kind of essentially in like a year. So I took a couple summer classes. It was planned 2 years, yeah. So that was the busiest year of my life. I still look back. I don't know if I slept. My roommates would say the same. And but what Coach Walker did is we went to the national meet together, and that networking aspect, and when you know who you know, obviously you got better opportunities. And this opportunity at Florida Gulf Coast came up. I put in an application, and next thing you know, the head coach at Florida Gulf Coast, her mentor was best friends with Coach Walker, and so that's what kind of led me into that. It's not that maybe I had more experience or less experience than somebody else, but it was. I got on the phone, I got on the interview, and then after that, she really believed in who I was and wanted to build with me. So.
And what takes you back to Hopkinton after that? There's only 1 year in Florida Gulf Coast?
Yeah, and our coaching industry is very cutthroat in terms of like how much you get paid and how much you don't. So, as a GA, the incentive was essentially a scholarship, getting my master's paid for, and I had a small little stipend to pay for rent. For the college kids out there, I was only getting paid $750 a month as a GA. So you got to eat, rent, everything off that. I'm glad I taught the year before and had a little money saved up. And shout out to my dad for helping me when I got broke. But then at FGCU, it was a full-time, part-time gig. And, I say that where any job that's posted as part-time in the college world is really full-time. They're having you come in with the expectation that you're going to go ahead and essentially be full-time on that staff. And I was working a lot and just not getting paid a lot. And we were trying to make that position full-time. She was vouching for me, fighting for me. But then when student loan payments kind of come up, it's, the have to live is, I think, what kind of takes some of us out of college coaching before we make it. And I had to make that decision. I really thought that was kind of shutting the door on the college scene because I think it's really hard to always get in. And then once you're in, if you go out, it's super tough to get back in. So I just extremely blessed that how my pathway kind of worked out, and still have a great relationship with Cassandra to this day. That was my head coach there, Coach Goodson, and her best saying to me was, "Get comfortable with being uncomfortable." And I still every day I think that's the truth. So
spoiler alert: the door opens again. You get back in.
Yep.
Right. So you go back to Hopkinton for what, about 4 or 5 years or so, and
Yep.
we talked about all the achievements the student athletes had there. How do you get from Hopkinton then back to Campbell again?
Yeah, so the head coach that's there presently right now, he got hired in 2012, and I still remember the first conversation I had with him, just saying congrats, excited to see what he does. As a Campbell alum, you're always kind of watching, so you always kind of have that place in your heart. And when I came back to Hopkinton and started doing some really good things, Campbell essentially poached me. The athletic department definitely changed from the time when I was a student athlete. There wasn't a lot of funding into athletics. It was all really academically driven, and Campbell still is a great academic school, really thriving. I mean, that law school being in the city of Raleigh, I mean, they really are doing some great things, but they didn't really invest money in athletics until, say, the decade of the 2010s. And so once all this success was happening at Hopkinton, it's when you're kind of tunnel vision, just working really hard where you're at, sometimes you might get a call. And Campbell wanted to expand the program, and they wanted to field some of the events that they didn't have. And, I got hired to help out with those events they didn't have. And really at Campbell found my niche as a throws coach. Recruiting just went really well and had some kids thrive, and that's where it all started.
One of those kids specifically, Patience Marshall's still there, right?
Yep.
Set the school record for shot put, correct?
Yeah, in total, I mean, so I joined the Campbell staff in April 2017. and they had 0 throwers. So right before obviously taking the UNCW job, they're up to 14 throwers. Patience is one of many that is a high achiever over there right now. Last year, she actually was the USA U20 champion, so the USA track and field under 20 champ in the shot put. She improved her PR from 45 feet to 53 and surprised essentially the entire track world and earned a spot on Team USA because of that, went to the Pan American Games, got 3rd. And so she just, obviously has led this kind of new charge of Campbell throwers being studs.
Yeah.
And, so I think in total, those 8 school records that they've broken. Patience is currently right now ranked 22nd in the country for Division I. And so even like a big focus we have here at UNCW is getting kids on the national stage, building the brand that we are. And the Campbell throwers definitely have a brand. They're recognized. And, when they go to meets, there's a lot of respect, even with them only being freshmen, sophomores. There's a couple juniors that were there kind of when I started things, but it was a little harder recruiting when things first started. And then the floodgates really have opened up. The underclassmen are really doing tremendous things there at Campbell University.
What makes it the right time then to take the short drive down I-40 to Wilmington, and now you're the head of your own program now at a D1 level? Yeah, and the timing always for the kids on both ends. It really it just frankly it always stinks. It's hard on everybody. Well, the season's pretty much year-round. Right?
Yeah, and so there's never a good time. So when we kind of take a look at this opportunity, everything happened fast. I was a candidate because of obviously all the great work that I had done. It's really hard to be selfish in this sport, because everything we do is about relationships and putting other people in front of us. And, through the process, I'd put in an application. I love Coach Thomas, who's on staff here. I've worked, numerous camps with him. So when the opportunity came up, he was actually one of the ones that started even recruiting me to be the guy. He really believed in who I was and what I could bring. And he's like, you really need to think about this. And, so shout out to Coach Thomas, obviously who was the first one that really kind of put me on the opportunity. And, once everything started to come to fruition, it's one where I'm truly blessed. It's an honor and a privilege to be a head coach. So at Campbell, I was an assistant coach. And so in this world, when we kind of talk about advancement and progress, you always want to be somewhere where you can make it home. And Campbell has always been home. It always will be home. But now when I think about, obviously the promotion and being a head coach and now being able to take exactly what I did for the throwers and do it for an entire team, for an entire program, it's the impact that I know I can make and what I can bring is exciting. So, truly blessed and honored.
So let's kind of get into that maybe a little bit too on what it's going to take for Wilmington overall to have success, track and field, everything, right? What are some things that you plan to implement right away that maybe weren't here before you got here?
And I think the number one thing I have to do is look back to the rich history and everything that brought us to this point. And if I start, the rich tradition that's always come from Wilmington is their resiliency to always do so much with, say, so little. When you look at the Division I world, say there's a lot of programs that have, say a lot more money. But the world of track and field, we can always compete against the highest level of competition because, say if, a basketball team, say, Duke, they necessarily wouldn't want to take on UNCW because if UNCW is good, their brand, their exposure, they don't want to lose to a UNCW. So it's hard for us to kind of crack into that world at times. But with the track world, everything is on an even playing field. So it doesn't matter where you come from, how much money you have, you essentially have this opportunity to go compete and go earn a spot. And so it really comes back to that hardworking nature. And, that's who UNCW has been to me the entire time I've known them, even when, I was a student athlete back, 2005 to 2010. And they just always had, say if they even slept 6 guys to a room in a hotel, they were going to go show up to a meet to go try to beat some people. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the competitive nature and just the culture and just what they bring, I mean, it's a unique situation where, we have kids that are super high achievers in the classroom, love being just in Wilmington in general. And then when you add the track piece and they're able to do both, you find this really good kid that, is the UNCW brand that wants to go and wants to really move.
Well, and to be honest with you, it's kind of been up in the air the last couple of years. I know it's kind of been a roller coaster with the track program, it seems like. Speaking with some of the student athletes myself that have been on the track and field team, it's kind of been up in the air about even having a program at times for track and field. So bringing in a younger, energetic guy like yourself that's bringing the juice, what kind of athletes then are you going to try to get to come here to kind of build a foundation almost again? Because it wasn't that long ago. There's, rumors going around that might not even field a track and field team.
Yeah, and cash flow and obviously investment from an athletic department is where it always is. And so, obviously if we kind of look at that situation of what happened, track teams are generally larger teams. So sometimes if you think about having to save money, what's maybe a sport that would go first? It's, track is an extremely large roster. It takes a lot to be able to move a team from place to place. Mm-hmm. And when that situation happened, the alumni, the community, everybody stepped up in a big way and said, no way. I remember it was just in a couple months' time, they raised $250,000. And then now when you look at where the investment is going, so the university sees that, the athletic department sees that, so they go ahead and they invest in $1 million track facility. So, now when we kind of talk about the resurgence, because it's not like making it from inception, UNCW's always had this rich tradition. And, that's a huge shout out to the alumni and to obviously the coaches and everybody who came before me. Now I'm essentially in this situation where it's let's keep building the brand. And, the way that I'll go about that is, that is essentially with, my character, the integrity. I have an immense amount of loyalty. And so, when I just communicate, I feel like I communicate at a very high level. If we all have the same amount of time in a day, what makes some of us better than others? It's that we're able to get the most out of people in the same amount of time. And so, that's where my mentors come into play. And I think even with a reputation across the state, I just always have been that Southern hospitality like we talked about earlier. I'm going to take the time and be able to talk to you. And, with the grassroots, me coming from the 1A high school level, there's nobody that was too small or too big to be able to talk to, and every single one of us play a part. Coach Thomas is one of the best recruiters in this country, and if you look at the talent that he's even brought on this roster right now, and this is a man that, essentially has been coaching an entire track team by himself while recruiting, while still signing athletes, while still achieving at a high level. So it's if Coach Thomas can do that, and I know I'm going to be able to work alongside him, and obviously eventually we're going to hire another assistant coach as well, all with the same mentality of this, hey, we got to check in every single day. Let's go to work. Let's keep bringing the consistency, and that confidence will keep building from there. So I think even across the state, we keep doing the right things. People are going to start to notice, and this program is going to be back to where it was and beyond, very, very fast.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the funds and the money. I mean, you got the right AD here when it comes to that, I think. Jimmy Bass knows what he's doing when it comes to that. That's one thing I can say.
Yeah, and the Seahawk Club and everything that Jimmy's doing, these are, just great people.
Absolutely.
You talk to them, they genuinely have a plan. It's not just frivolously asking for money. When you kind of think of the alumni base from the athletic department, we're a relatively young university, so 1947, I believe, was obviously our first, obviously day. And, we had, primarily all teachers, and we know teachers don't make a whole lot of money, so really hard to kind of, generate some of those funds. And now we're in a time period of, just immense growth, and obviously even just being ahead of the curve, when it comes to the academics and what we're doing as a university. So I think, everything is on the up and up. We're definitely moving in the right direction. And, when I said it earlier, honored, blessed, it's a privilege to lead a university like this where we're trying to go, because we are progressive in nature. The chancellor says it, and so we obviously know when the leader says it, it happens from the top down, and, we've got every single opportunity to go do what we need to do.
Yeah, the chancellor's definitely invested in athletics here. See him at baseball games, basketball games all the time. He's definitely supportive of athletics, so it's something we got going for us, I think. But
and then talk about, it's more of a kind of a long-term discussion there, but, you've got a meet coming up in about 10 days or so, right, going to Daytona?
Yeah.
What's that look like? What's the short term look like here for the rest of the spring season now that you're on board?
Yeah, and I'll even start with just Monday, so Monday, obviously, because I started on Monday and now it's Wednesday, and, like we talked about the timing and how this transition goes. Monday, the number one goal was to know everybody. And, you know, when we talk about me being a relationship-based coach, you know, I almost went that teacher mentality, you know, with a checklist of a roster. And he's like, you know, what do you like to be called? And, you know, I really kind of made that the goal to make time for everybody, to reach out to everybody, you know, spoke to every single one of the groups. And then I tried to be 100% by the end of the day in terms of knowing everybody's names. And I actually was. There were a couple times, you know, all of a sudden I'm thinking while they're warming up, I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh, got it, boom. So, and then being able to go, you know, essentially just know that I'm invested in them, you know, because it wasn't about me coming in day one and having that perfect workout like we talked about. It's about them understanding that I truly do care. And everywhere I've left, I've always left it in a better place. And all those situations were tailor-made for somebody to come in to continue the growth, continue the progress. And as a coach, I always respect everybody who came before me because they obviously sweat, tears, you know, everything they invested, you know, it all plays a part. And so now me kind of being the next generation of, you know, Seahawks here, I'm excited to lead Seahawk Nation and, you know, everything that we do, wings up, you know, I got to get my hashtags right. And, you know, I just really look forward to building these relationships. And then once I make a decision on how we're going to divvy up those roles and responsibilities, the kids are going to see that it's all of us are in this together as a family, you know, and once you have this family, you know that you fight. You fight a lot more for family than you will for anything else. And, you know, when they realize that even if they're jumping or throwing or sprinting or hurdling, you know, that they're going to have this support. And, you know, I want us to be that team where, you know, if we're over at the high jump, you know, everybody's cheering for the athlete that's competing. You know, track is a very diverse situation where, you know, some programs have this sense of, you know, everybody's kind of in their own little place. And you kind of get, you know, kind of pigeonholed into that. And the part that I really look to bring, you know, is number one, just that we're all in this together. And we know that if we're going to achieve at a high level, it's going to be not just because of one person, it's going to be because of the investment all around from the top down.
Can't beat that.
Yeah. Hawk, yeah.
Oh, Hawk, yeah. Yeah, I got to get that one. Hashtag that.
Yeah, that's another one. That's another big one around campus.
Yeah.
It's Mike's favorite.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Beard one.
Beard one, yes. Yes. Yeah. Beard two. Running the board. But, yeah, I guess that kind of wraps things up. I mean, it was great to have you on. We appreciate it and look forward to having you on again. I know we'll probably all stop by sometime during the season and come check you out, see how you're doing.
Yeah, please do.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you out there. I know they're excited. I've talked to a couple people over the last week that are on the track team that are excited for the new look, excited to get out there and get started. So we look forward to seeing you out there.
Yeah, appreciate it. And, yeah, definitely hope to be back on after we finish the season. You kind of see what we do and, you know, kind of talk about exposure and just communication. You know, this is exactly one of the pillars that I believe, clear communication. So it's great what you guys are doing. Appreciate it. You know, you guys keep on grinding and getting some of this content out there. It means a whole lot. And I know the kids are going to love, obviously, just being able to hear it and being able to look back. We're all in this together. So I appreciate the time, and thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. This is another episode of Hawktalk with Easy and the Beards. Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by Beard Number 1, Michael Barnes, on Twitter at BSZeusBS. Me, Beard Number 2, Avery Ferry, at Avery Ferry on Twitter. And then also Elijah Mize, known as Easy, at Sports Guy Eli on Twitter. And let's not forget the new guy bringing you our video for this podcast, Jordan Robinson. You can follow him on Twitter at jbacante.